Hey you guys, it's Teresa and welcome back to my channel. Today's video is going to be me discussing my thoughts on After the Flood by Cassandra Montag. And I have a fair bit of things to talk about. Let's just kind of get into it. So for those of you who don't know, After the Flood by Cassandra Montag is a 2019 release that came out, I think, in September. It's one of those 2 months. There's a large gap between them, but it's fine. It is a post-apocalyptic world after the events of a gigantic flood, or like lots of floods that have essentially wiped out civilization as we know it. Now this story specifically centers around a mother-daughter duo who are currently like traveling the world via boat, because that's really the only way you can travel in this post-flood world, trying to search for the eldest child out of them. The eldest daughter? The eldest child. She was pretty traumatically taken away from the mother, Myra, who we meet, and the daughter, Pearl, when Myra was pregnant with Pearl. So, pretty intense. As you can tell, it's a lot, and it kind of poses this question of, would you end up having to sacrifice one child to save the other? And it's a lot of morality questions, and a lot of like empathy questions, and it's a lot. So this book does have a lot of trigger warnings. As you can tell, there is a post-apocalyptic world, so trigger warnings for like death. There is suicide, like violence and death and all that stuff. I will try to, if I don't leave, if I can't figure out or remember any more trigger warnings within this book, I will go ahead and I'll add more trigger warnings in my Goodreads review, which will also have this video linked in there. So I will leave that down below in case I forget. And if you guys have read this book and know more trigger warnings, also share them with me and I will go ahead and insert them in the Goodreads review, so that way you guys are aware. So yeah. So my first thoughts on this particular book was that I didn't even know this book existed. TB freaking 8. I only heard about it through Jessie from Bow Ties and Books. They were talking about it pretty strongly on Twitter, and I forgot what I had commented on their post, but they told me to go ahead and read it. They convinced me pretty well to go ahead and pick up the book. So I finally picked it up, and can I just say that I didn't know what I was getting myself into. I thought it was gonna be like a nice little kind of story, even though it sounded like a pretty dark topic. I thought it was gonna be a pretty neat story, and then we got down to it and it's like a weird The Last of Us situation, just minus the zombies and more water. Now for the things that I did love about this book then, there are a lot, and sadly since I'm standing, I can't really glance down on my bullet journal, so I'm gonna have to try to remember as much as I can before having to look back. So, one second. So let's just start this kind of long list of things that I did love with kind of the basic theme around this book. I really enjoyed the theme of like, how far are you willing to go to save your child, and would you be willing to sacrifice one child for the other kind of thing. It wasn't like a physical like, I'm going to sacrifice this child to like the gods or something to bring my other daughter back. Let's just make that very clear, because I'm not explaining that very well at all. But I was thinking more along the lines of like, would you put your other daughter through hell and back, essentially, through potential like floods and drowning, and like kind of almost traumatize your daughter just to get closure and come back with your other one, if that makes any kind of sense at all. I love me a very good post-apocalyptic world. I have said that, I've never said that on this channel actually, but I like me a good post-apocalyptic world. I don't read a lot of them, but I like them. Cassandra Montag had done a wonderful job of like crafting this world and like showing us kind of basically the things that we have known from seeing like movies and TV shows where disaster or like a zombie apocalypse has kind of ravaged our world as we know it. We see that people have gotten further into themselves and like have become these terrible, horrible people because there are no rules, there are no laws. Though one can say that at present there probably aren't very many laws that are being enforced, but that's besides the point and for a different video. But also kind of this concept of like this feeling of hope that even underneath all of this there are still decent people that come out of the rubble and try to like make a community for themselves and make like the place better to live in, even though it is hard to live in this world. I also really like this question of like, if you could only choose one family member, would you do it? Primarily because there are a lot of that questions, like that goes back to the beginning, like the first couple of points that I had, where people do have to choose. You have to choose whether or not you save the family member with diabetes, whether or not you choose a sibling to try to create a better world or try to choose your daughter to find another one. It poses this really like heavy question, and there isn't a set answer for it, and I really like that even throughout the entirety of this book, we never really get that answer, and it's just like this kind of gut feeling within ourselves that if we had to choose a family member, it would be the first one that we go to, and that it's not cookie cutter, black and white, like if I could save everyone, I'd find a way to do it. It's very much like if you only have one choice. You can't go back and hit reset. You are in this world where life kind of has to happen with or without you. Like I said, this did remind me a lot of like The Last of Us. I think it's primarily because of like the story where we come with this kind of like these two people and they have to travel to get to one goal that's still very vague and very we don't know what's at the end of the rainbow kind of situation. But somehow like they find a family either within themselves or within everyone else, and like this whole camaraderie thing and feeling this loss and this grief of everything and like trying to heal from trauma. That reminded me a lot of The Last of Us, only The Last of Us had zombies and had a lot of shooting, and while this one doesn't have nearly as much shooting or any zombies at all, this one had posed a bit more of a moral question than The Last of Us, because I feel like The Last of Us was very much like, let's just get LA to one little spot in the world. And then with this one, it was a bit more like, what do I do to protect my kid, or both of my kids? Like, well, who has to go, in a sense, kind of. Will I come out with both children, or will I come out with one? That kind of situation. I also really like that Cassandra managed to get us to really feel for every single character. We don't get a lot of face time with some characters. Like, we have a very small cast of characters, and at the end of the day, we can only really get so much like backstory and everything, because like she's not big but she's not thin either, so she's like a nice in between, but there's not a lot of space for us to figure out which character will go with where, like what backstory we can get. But somehow Cassandra Montague crafted the world and the characters in a way that we got their personalities through their actions, and even if they were a side character, we got a lot of like descriptions and their actions that just make you love them and want to root for them, even though like chances are they're probably gonna die. So I really enjoyed that, because I feel like especially in post-apocalyptic world, it's really easy to just create a character or a set of characters that shut each other out and it's just very separate. But this one, we stumble upon this kind of community and this very welcoming and warm community that I think was a wonderful way to kind of expand that concept of like healing from trauma and learning to trust again, which is another theme that is very heavy in this book. The last thing that I really did like was Pearl. Pearl is one of the main protagonists. She is the youngest daughter. She is the baby. She's like 7 or 8. When the book actually gets going, she was literally in the womb when the book actually started. I love her just because she just presents this question of like what children have to go through when they live through these less than ideal situations, and like how they have to grow up really quickly. Like, because sometimes Pearl did not read like a 7-year-old. She would say things, especially in the beginning, she just sounded really mature, and sometimes I forgot that she wasn't 7. I thought she was at least like 13. So it was really interesting to read that and see kind of this concept of like how children mature really quickly, but then at the same time she still retained a lot of that like childlike innocence. She loved her little animal, she loved her mother, she was willing to do everything for her mother, she was very trusting and open and adventurous. She had, like Maya said, that she had a kind of a bite to her that she hoped that would never go away throughout her entire life. And she also had fears that were irrational in a sense, but also it made sense considering the time frame that she grew up in and like these losses she had to kind of endure. But I want to protect her so much, just because she went through so much in like the span of like maybe a couple of months or like a year or so, and she still was this very happy-go-lucky and very like strong-willed girl, where I feel like had it been anyone else that was in Pearl, they would have ended up on the side where they would just be really beaten down and just not very childlike. And I saw a lot of like the community that rallied around Myra, and particularly Pearl, kind of went above and beyond to protect that. Despite their own like little rules and regulations within this like little community, they gave some leeway because she is a kid, and like despite everything, children are like basically not only the legacy that we leave behind, but also like this concept of like this little bit of hope that will continue to push forward in this really dark time. Now, as for things I did not like, the list is pretty short, as you can tell by the raving review that I gave it not 5 seconds ago. The only thing that I did not like was this relationship between these two characters. I understood why the trajectory of that relationship had to happen. I knew from the very beginning when they were introduced that these two characters specifically were going to have a thing because Myra is very set on her goal, which if you have read the book, I'm assuming you probably have picked up on who it is. However, my biggest thing was that I felt like the book we didn't get much closure with their relationship. It was like it just kind of ended because of the circumstances that happened and the lies that were kind of told, and it just ended. I didn't understand where these two people stood after the fact. It was very like, so do you guys hate each other? Do you guys like feel something for each other? And then when like the climax scene happened and we got a lot of like the stuff that kind of went down and blew up and all of that stuff, I still didn't understand kind of where they stood, because by then the other character had already moved on, but there was no reaction from character B as to this new development in this relationship. So it was just like, I need to know what had happened, though I suppose it makes sense given the entire theme of the book, since there is like a lot of things of trauma and mourning, and I guess when things like that do happen in terms of like losing loved ones or having a relationship, it doesn't necessarily always get closure or like a sense of like finished. It just kind of ends, if that makes any kind of sense. Like there's no like stop to it, you know? It just kind of like if you were to drive your car off a cliff, the relationship would end at the cliff, you know? Like visualize like the cliff and then the car and then his relationship ends and like we don't see like what happens after. I don't know if that made any sense. That was the one thing that I didn't like, though I did understand kind of where that relationship was going and how it had to happen. So I wasn't like too upset that went that way. It's just since because I was waiting for a different thing to happen that I was very happy that was going that way. As for my overall thoughts, I gave this a 5 out of 5 stars. I think it deals with a lot of like moral questions and a lot of the concept of, like I said, morality and like what would you do to protect a kid? Would you sacrifice the other? But I have never been so stressed about a book from the get-go. In the very beginning, I was unbelievably stressed, and then to the very end, I was really, really stressed. Like, I had DM'd Jessie trying to like get a concept of my feelings, and I was a mess. And I'm really sorry, Jessie, that you had to go through that, because I am a stressful messenger. Tweeter, DMer. I send a lot of spam texts when I am stressed. I was very stressed with this, and I really enjoyed how at the end of the book, like you had your thoughts at the beginning. You really did. And I think by the end, she had written it in a way that I felt lighter at the end of the book. Like she had written this book in a way that the healing from the trauma and like this kind of like relearning to open yourself up again happened so naturally and so gradually that by the end of the book I felt a lot lighter and a lot more healed, even though I was not the one who went through that particular trauma. But I particularly felt healed from that. Honestly, I highly recommend this book. I think it's a wonderful book. It's definitely going to be my top somewhere of 2020. I don't know where exactly because I've really only read like 4 books, I think, this month. And somehow 2 of the 4 are currently sitting in like top 10 of 2020. I just highly recommend, and honestly, if Jessie somehow watches this, I will be taking like any more book recommendations that you have for me. I really appreciated this one, so any book recommendations at all, I will happily take from you. Though, can we wait like maybe like 6 months before you give me another one? Because I'm still reeling from this, so I don't know if I can handle another one directly after this one. But thank you for this recommendation. But that is it for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed this kind of spoiler-free review. I try to keep my reviews fairly spoiler-free because I have a different segment or like a different set of videos that I do that isn't spoiler-free. So until next time, hit like, subscribe, comment on your thoughts as to whether or not you have read this book or if like you would like to read this book. Like I said, hit like, comment, subscribe, all that fun stuff. I do upload videos like twice a week. But until then, I hope you guys have a wonderful week and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye!